Part 1, The Night Everything Broke. I'd rather die than marry him. She said it laughing. Not laughing with me, laughing at the idea of me. The question had been harmless. One of her friends, already tipsy, leaning across the table with that fake serious smile people wear when they want gossip. So, when's he finally gonna propose? I was mid-sip when Emma answered. I mean. God. I hope never. Her voice carried. Clear. Sharp. Confident. The table went quiet in that way only bars do, music still playing, glasses clinking nearby, but our little bubble suddenly frozen. I'd literally rather die. She lifted her drink like she'd just delivered a punchline. I didn't react. Not because it didn't hurt, but because something inside me went strangely still. I smiled, finished my beer, stood up, and walked out. The bar was in downtown Austin, all neon lights and concrete floors, the kind of place where cocktails had ironic names and cost $20. I hated it. Emma loved it. Her friends Rachel and Brianna lived for it. So for 2 years, I showed up. Thursday nights. Loud music. Expensive drinks. I played my role. The boyfriend who listened. The boyfriend who drove. The boyfriend who paid when the tab came. I was the quiet counterweight to Emma's constant motion. That night started like every other. Emma was holding court, talking about work. And then he asked for my sources, she said, rolling her eyes. Like the visuals weren't self-explanatory. Rachel shook her head. Classic insecure middle manager. Brianna sipped her lavender-colored drink. Men in tech love pretending they're smarter than everyone. Emma grabbed my arm, nails pressing just enough. Right, Jake? You know exactly what I'm dealing with. They all looked at me. My cue. That sounds frustrating, I said. Emma smiled. The right answer. She released my arm and grabbed her drink, something pink and foamy she ordered because the name sounded iconic. I went back to my beer. I'd heard this story before. At home. On our couch. Over takeout. I'd listened. Validated. Offered solutions. But solutions weren't welcome at the bar. Here, the story wasn't about fixing things. It was about performance. And I was a prop. We'd been together 2 years. When she got laid off 8 months earlier, I covered the rent. Cooked meals. Sat through late-night anxiety spirals. When she landed a new job, I celebrated like it was my own win. We chose this bar to celebrate her first paycheck. Our spot, she called it. I looked at her under the neon glow, confident, beautiful, alive, and felt that familiar mix of affection and exhaustion I never knew how to name. She burned bright. I made sure nothing burned down. The conversation shifted to dating apps. Brianna was telling a horror story about a guy who used old photos. Emma leaned into me, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. God, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. She kissed my cheek. I smiled automatically. Another round arrived. I didn't order anything. I was driving. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister asking if I wanted to help rebuild the carburetor on her old Honda this weekend. Something warm bloomed in my chest. Yes. Absolutely, I typed back. Emma tried to grab my phone. Who's that? My sister, I said, pulling it away. Weekend plans. She smiled. Ugh, you and that greasy garage. It was part of our routine. She teased my hobbies. I pretended to be offended. She called me her handyman with a wink. Our dance. Rachel leaned forward, drunk enough to feel profound. You know, she said, pointing between us, you two are solid. She giggled. Like, grossly solid. Brianna laughed. Emma wrapped her arm around mine. We are, aren't we? No, I'm serious, Rachel said, louder now. So when's it happening? When's he finally putting a ring on it? The question landed heavier than it should have. 6 months earlier, Emma and I were hiking near Sedona. She slipped. I caught her. Breathless, shaken, she looked up at me and said, "Don't ever let me go." I meant it. I looked at her now, waiting for the playful deflection. The fake blush. The squeeze of my arm. Instead, she laughed. Not her warm laugh. A thinner one. She pulled her arm away, took a long sip of her drink, eyes fixed on the glass. Then she said it. I'd rather die. Something in me clicked. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Clarity. For the first time in 2 years, I heard her without translating, softening, or excusing. I stood up. Paid the tab. And walked out of the life I'd been holding together alone. Part 2, The Silent Exit. The night air outside the bar felt colder than it should have. Not because of the weather, but because the noise inside my head had suddenly stopped. No arguing. No replaying her words. No anger bubbling up. Just silence. I walked to my car like I was following a script I'd written years ago and forgotten about. Behind me, somewhere inside that neon-lit room, Emma was probably laughing it off. Telling her friends I was being sensitive. That I'd cool down and come back. I didn't turn around. I drove home in silence. No radio. No podcast. Just the steady hum of the engine and the rhythmic swipe of the windshield wipers through a light Texas drizzle. My hands were steady on the wheel. That scared me more than anything else. The apartment lights were off when I walked in. Her heels were kicked off by the door. A half-empty wine glass sat on the kitchen counter. A throw blanket lay rumpled on her side of the couch. Ghosts of our routine. I didn't stop. I walked past the bedroom and straight into the second room, the one I used as an office. She called it my man cave. Always half-joking. Always a little dismissive. This was my space. Engineering books on the shelves. Motorcycle manuals stacked in uneven piles. A map of a road trip we never took, pinned to the wall. I sat down at my desk. Opened my laptop. Created a new document. Exit strategy. The words appeared without hesitation. No emotion. No drama. Just action. Phase 1, immediate separation. Move essential items tonight. Clothes. Toiletries. Laptop. Documents. Change passwords. Banking. Email. Cloud storage. Joint savings was minimal, still, separate it. Forward personal emails to a new account. Phase 2, physical extraction. Search short-term furnished rentals. 1 month minimum. Budget flexible. Book movers, small job. Priority items only. Motorcycle gear. Toolboxes. Books. Desktop computer. No items from the master bedroom. No shared furniture. Phase 3, communication blackout. Block Emma on phone. Block on social media. Create email filters to auto-archive anything from her address. Notify landlord of cohabitation breakdown. Offer to pay penalty to exit lease cleanly. I worked for 2 hours. Methodical. Focused. By midnight, I'd booked a furnished studio across town, beige, anonymous, available the next afternoon. Movers scheduled for 9 a.m. Deposit paid. Confirmation emails received. My phone buzzed on the desk. Then buzzed again. I didn't flip it over. The vibrations felt distant, like thunder in another city. At 1:07 a.m., it rang. Unknown number. Some leftover fragment of the man I'd been earlier that night made me answer, not to argue, not to explain. Just to end it properly. Jake, what the hell? Emma's voice snapped through the speaker. You just left me there. You embarrassed me. Her anger was sharp, but brittle. Underneath it, panic was already forming. She'd expected a fight. Expected me to come home wounded. To argue. To beg. My silence wasn't part of her script. I looked out the office window at the dark city. Just saving you from a fate worse than death, I said calmly. And I ended the call. I powered my phone off completely. The silence that followed was total. And for the first time in 2 years, it belonged to me. The next 72 hours passed like a controlled demolition. I slept deeply on the guest bed. No dreams. No racing thoughts. When Emma came home the next evening, I stayed in my office. I heard the door open. Her heels. Her paws outside the door. Jake, she called. We need to talk. Silence. A knock. Harder this time. This is ridiculous. You can't just hide. More silence. Her footsteps retreated, louder, angrier. Saturday morning, I left before she woke up. The movers arrived at 9 o'clock sharp. Efficient. Quiet. In 20 minutes, my life was loaded into a truck. Motorcycle. Toolboxes. 3 boxes labeled Jake. I handed the foreman the apartment key. Leave it inside the door when you're done, I said. I drove to the new studio. It smelled like clean linen and nothing else. No memories. No performances. Just space. This wasn't a home. It was a forward operating base. And standing there, alone, I felt lighter than I had in years. Part 3, The Aftershock. The silence didn't last. It never does. The first wave hit the moment Emma realized I wasn't coming back. I'd unblocked her number briefly, not to talk, just to make sure she received the formal emails about the lease and logistics. Within minutes, the messages started pouring in. Emma. You're seriously overreacting. It was a joke. Emma. Rachel thinks you're being manipulative. Emma. I can't believe you do this to me after everything I've given up for you. I read them with the detached curiosity of someone watching a storm from behind thick glass. Then I blocked her again. The second wave came through her friends. Unknown number. Jenna. Hey Jake, it's Brianna. Look, Emma's really upset. She didn't mean it like that. You know how she gets when she drinks. Another unknown number. Rachel. This is harsh. She's crying. You could at least talk to her. They were trying to restore the old system. The familiar dynamic where I smoothed things over, absorbed the damage, and made everything okay. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. Silence is terrifying to people who are used to control. By Sunday night, the tone shifted. Concern replaced anger. Emma. I'm worried about you. This isn't like you. Where are you staying? Emma. I saw the movers came. You took your bike. Why would you do that? Emma. Please just talk to me. We can fix this. I deleted them all. The only message I answered was from the landlord. He confirmed receipt of my notice and accepted my offer to forfeit my share of the security deposit to break the lease early. Thank you for handling this professionally, he wrote. Professional. That word made me smile. On Sunday night, sitting on the floor of my new studio eating takeout sushi, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Paul, my oldest friend. Dude, he said, skipping pleasantries. What the hell happened? Emma had called him. She'd framed the story perfectly. I'd had some kind of emotional breakdown over a joke. I'd vanished. Taken all my stuff. What was the joke? I asked calmly. Paul went quiet. She said she'd rather die than marry you, he finally admitted. But she said it was obviously a joke, man. It wasn't out of context, I said, picking up a piece of tuna. It was the context. Another pause. Then a low exhale. Yeah, he said. Okay. That's messed up. He didn't defend her again. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not relief. Expansion. The vacuum she left behind didn't fill with pain. It filled with air. The first month was about reclaiming myself. I joined a motorcycle touring group I'd bookmarked years ago and never joined because weekends were our time. One Sunday, we rode winding hill country roads, engines roaring, the air clean and sharp. No subtext. No performance. Just motion. I had beers with people who talked about carburetors and road trips instead of feelings and optics. I helped my sister rebuild her old Honda. Hands black with grease. She glanced at me and said, "You seem lighter." I didn't argue. At work, I accepted a 6-month project I'd always declined. Deep focus. Some travel. My boss looked surprised. I always thought you weren't into the grind, he said. I was busy managing weather, I replied. He laughed, not understanding. That was fine. Emma tried again 2 months later. This time with nostalgia. A photo arrived from a new number. Us at the beach. Sunburned. Laughing. Unknown. Remember this? I've never been that happy since. I deleted it. The past was a country that no longer issued visas. 3 days later, the crisis call came. Late. Desperate. Jake, please, she sobbed. I'm going to get evicted. I lost my job. I have no one. I listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't comfort. I made the biggest mistake of my life, she gasped. You're my home. I set my pencil down. You should call a financial advisor, I said. Or a housing assistance service. Silence. What? She whispered. I'm not a resource, I replied gently. I ended the call. Part 4, the mask comes off. The next call didn't come from Emma. It came from her mother. I was at my desk, sketching a motorcycle modification, when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar area code. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jake, sweetheart, a syrupy voice said. It's Carol. Emma's mom. Carol had always treated me like a useful accessory, a reliable piece of furniture in her daughter's life. Mrs. Reynolds, I said politely. Oh, Jake, she sighed. We're so worried about Emma. She's a mess. I said nothing. She's always been passionate, Carol continued. You know how she is. She speaks without thinking. A pause. Then the pressure. Don't you think you've punished her enough? There it was. She's learned her lesson, Carol said. She needs you. Be the man we know you are and forgive her. I leaned back in my chair. The entitlement was breathtaking. Mrs. Reynolds, I said calmly, I am being the man I am. And that man is no longer in a relationship with your daughter. Her tone sharpened. This pride of yours isn't worth destroying what you had. I agree, I replied. Which is why I ended it. I hung up. That night, the final message came. From a number I didn't recognize, but I knew it was her. The desperation was gone. The mask had slipped. Emma. Fine. You're just a coward who couldn't handle a strong woman speaking her truth. Emma. You were always boring and small. I'm better off without you. Emma. Enjoy your sad, empty life. I read it once. Then again. And for the first time since that night at the bar, I felt a genuine emotion. Not anger. Amusement. I saved the message. Proof. The receipt I never knew I'd need. Life didn't implode without her. It expanded. 6 months passed quietly, steadily. I bought a modest 1950s fixer-upper on a tree-lined street outside the city. Detached garage. Squeaky floors. An overgrown yard. It needed work. It had space. It was, by any definition, a boring little life. And it was mine. I hired a contractor named Ray, a no-nonsense guy in his 60s who appreciated clear plans and clean execution. We started with the garage. Fresh wood. Organized tools. The smell of sawdust and oil. Therapy in physical form. Work paid off. The project succeeded. Promotion followed. A bonus went straight into the house. I rode with the motorcycle group most weekends. I met Sarah, a graphic designer who rode a vintage Triumph. Our conversations were easy. No posturing. No performances. Just interest. No rush. Everything in my life now moved at a natural pace. Then the past tried to knock one last time. An email arrived from someone I barely remembered. Lisa Chen, a former co-worker of Emma's. I'm not writing this for Emma. But I think you deserve to know. Things fell apart after you left. Her performance at work tanked. She blamed everyone. She was let go last week. Maya and Brianna won't let her move in. Her comments about you have spread, not in her favor. You were good to her. What she did was cruel. The consequences are hers. I felt nothing for Emma. No satisfaction. No pity. Just distance. I wrote back. Thank you for your kindness. I'm doing very well. I hope you are too. She replied immediately. Good. I'm glad. Part 5, The Final Confrontation. 2 days after Lisa's email, it finally happened. I was at the old condo for a final walkthrough. The place was empty. No furniture. No photos. Just faint outlines on the carpet where our life used to sit. I was measuring the windows for blinds when I heard the key turn. My key. The one I'd left for the movers. The door opened slowly. Emma stood there. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. The polished, confident woman from the bar was gone. This Emma looked smaller. Thinner. Tired. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. No makeup. Oversized sweatshirt hanging off her frame. She hovered in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. Her eyes scanned the room. The bare walls. The empty space. The echo. Her breath hitched. Jake. I lowered the tape measure. Emma. She stepped inside cautiously, as if the floor might give out beneath her. It's empty, she whispered. It's sold, I said calmly. She flinched. You really did it, she said, voice trembling. You bought it. She said it like an accusation. It and Oppo's, an investment, I replied, neutral. The market's good. Her eyes filled. A tear slid down her cheek, untouched. I made a mistake, she said quickly, the words tumbling out like she'd practiced them. The biggest mistake of my life. I didn't move. That seemed to unnerve her. That night at the bar, she continued, desperate now, I was insecure. I was trying to look cool in front of them. I didn't mean it. Not really. I waited. Silence stretched. She took another step toward me. I've been punished, okay, she said, voice cracking. I lost my job. My friends disappeared. My mom's disappointed. I'm going to have to move back in with her. Her arms wrapped around herself. I have nothing. She looked at me like I was the last solid object in a collapsing world. You were my home, she whispered. This was our home. I ruined it. The performance was different now. No defiance. No sarcasm. Just need. Object need. I let her finish. Then I spoke. Yes, I said quietly. You did. She froze. Her eyes widened. And you were right, I continued. Confusion crossed her face. What? You were right, I repeated. You said you'd rather die than live that life with me. I stepped forward, not threatening, just present. It was the most honest thing you ever said to me. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. So I listened, I said. I let you go. She shook her head frantically. No, Jake, I didn't mean it like that. I was wrong. No, I said gently. You were honest. I gestured around the empty condo. That life is over. It was sold. I turned slightly so she could see the bright red sold sign through the front window. It was a transaction, I said calmly. And my new life doesn't have room for you. Her face drained of color. This wasn't the reaction she'd prepared for. Not anger. Not forgiveness. Not punishment. Agreement. Acceptance. Erasure. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said sincerely. But don't contact me again. This is the last time we speak. I walked past her. She didn't move. Didn't follow. Didn't scream. She stood frozen in the center of an empty room, surrounded by the consequences of her own words. I opened the door. Sunlight poured in. Jake, she whispered one last time. I didn't turn around. I closed the door behind me. The lock clicked. A clean, final sound. Part 6, The Quiet Win. I didn't feel victorious when I left the condo. No surge of triumph. No rush of revenge. Just calm. The kind that settles in your chest when you finally stop carrying something heavy you didn't realize was weighing you down. I walked to my truck. The Moto Club decal on the rear window caught the light. I got in, started the engine, and let it idle for a moment. The city wasn't something I was escaping anymore. It was just background. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. It became honest. The house needed work. The floors creaked. The kitchen looked like it hadn't been updated since the Reagan administration. The yard was more weeds than grass. But the structure was solid. I spent weekends in the garage, sleeves rolled up, music playing low. Fixing things. Learning things. Building something that didn't need applause to matter. Work stabilized. Then it grew. The project I'd taken on succeeded. My boss promoted me and gave me a bonus that went straight into the house fund. No celebration dinner. No Instagram post. Just progress. Sarah and I kept riding together. Sometimes we grabbed a beer afterward. Sometimes we didn't. There was no rush to define anything. No pressure to perform. One evening, as we sat on the tailgate watching the sun drop behind the hills, she said, "You seem settled." I smiled. I am. That was enough. A year after the bar, I finished the garage. White walls. Organized tools. Clean concrete floor. I stood there alone, hands on my hips, breathing in the smell of oil and sawdust. This was the life she'd called suffocating. It felt like oxygen. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Emma eventually moved out of state. New city. New job. New circle. I hoped she'd learn something. But it didn't matter. She wasn't part of the story anymore. The real ending wasn't dramatic. No final argument. No closure conversation. Just consistency. Peace. Boundaries that held. The night she said she'd rather die than marry me felt like an ending. It wasn't. It was the beginning of a life that didn't require me to disappear in order for someone else to shine. Sometimes the win isn't loud. Sometimes it's just waking up in a house you chose. Doing work you respect. And realizing, quietly, you're finally free.